the yellow halls.
If only I had never taken the wrong door. It was late. Another endless day at the office. The hum of fluorescent lights had been gnawing at me since morning. The stale air thick with printer toner and burnt coffee. I was the last one in the building, shutting everything down, packing up. And then I saw it. A door I had never noticed before. Tucked at the end of the hallway near the copy room, painted the same dull beige as the walls. Not marked, not locked. It was the sort of door you could pass 100 times without ever really seeing. Something about it caught me. A feeling. Like it wanted me to open it. I don't know why I listened. When I pushed it open, I expected a supply closet, maybe a server room. Instead, I stepped into a corridor I had never seen before. The walls were yellow, sickly, faded yellow, patterned with faint stains like water damage. The floor was covered in damp carpet, the kind that squishes when you step. The ceiling was low, lined with buzzing fluorescent tubes that flickered like dying insects. And it went on, and on, and on. By the time I turned back, the door was gone. The first thing I noticed was the hum. The lights above droned with a constant, oppressive buzz that drilled into my skull. It wasn't just sound. It was a vibration, a pressure, something that seemed to settle into my bones. The second thing I noticed was the smell. Old carpet, damp, moldy, sour, like a flooded basement that never dried. I walked. The hall stretched in every direction, always the same. Yellow walls, yellow walls, yellow walls. The floor soaked with invisible moisture, the ceiling pressing low. No windows, no doors, just corridors. Every corner I turned revealed another hallway, another split. Sometimes I found alcoves that led nowhere, sometimes narrow passages that forced me sideways. Once, a stairwell leading up, but the steps twisted and returned me to the same level. My phone was dead. My watch had stopped. Time was leaking, here. And the longer I walked, the more I felt I wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was an echo. I was walking fast, heart pounding, trying to find a landmark, a clue. My own shoes slapped the wet carpet. Then a second beat, just behind me, matching me, but not quite. When I stopped, it stopped. When I walked again, it followed. I turned corners suddenly, hoping to catch someone. There was never anyone there. Just the yellow walls, stretching out like veins. But the sound grew bolder, no longer just behind me, sometimes ahead, sometimes to the left, down a parallel corridor, sometimes close enough that I felt breath on my neck, though no one was there. I whispered, "Hello?" The hum swallowed my voice, but the steps answered. 1, 2, 3, slow, heavy, approaching. I ran. Running didn't help. The hall shifted as I moved, folding into impossible angles. Corridors looped back on themselves. Ceilings rose 30 feet high in one room, then dropped low enough to scrape my scalp in the next. Once, I found a chamber bigger than a warehouse, with hundreds of fluorescent tubes dangling on cords, swaying as if something had brushed past them. Once, I crawled through a gap no wider than a vent, only to emerge into a hall that looked identical to the one I'd left. The hum was louder now, the buzz of the lights merging into something deeper, a drone, a growl, and the steps. They no longer hid. I saw shadows moving just around corners, too tall, too thin. Once, I glimpsed a hand retreating behind a doorway, long fingers yellowed like parchment. When I pressed my ear to a wall, I heard breathing, slow, patient, on the other side of the plaster. The halls weren't empty, they were waiting. I don't know how long I had been walking, hours, days. I hadn't eaten. My throat burned. My legs shook. The buzzing lights carved migraines into my skull. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a person, a figure at the far end of the corridor, standing still under the fluorescent glare. I shouted. My voice cracked. The figure didn't move. I took a step closer. It shifted. The movement was wrong, like frames missing from a film reel. One moment it was standing. The next, it was a foot closer, though I hadn't seen it move. Another step. Another skip. Closer. Closer. I ran. The corridors bent, folded, twisted. I lost track of where I was going. Every time I glanced back, the figure was nearer. Not chasing, not running, just appearing. Closer, closer, closer. I ducked into an alcove and pressed myself against the wall. My breath loud, my heart like thunder. And then, across from me, in the opposite alcove, it stood, face white, mouth stretched too wide, eyes like holes punched through paper. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe. And when I screamed, its mouth stretched wider, swallowing the sound. After that, I stopped calling for help. The halls weren't safe. The alcoves weren't safe. The stairwells weren't safe. Nothing here was safe. The buzzing of the lights had changed. Sometimes it whispered words I almost understood. Sometimes it moaned, low and animal. The walls pulsed when I touched them, warm, veined. I heard voices now, not just footsteps. Voices. My boss's voice, calling me back to work. My mother's voice, begging me to come home. My own voice, whispering things I never said. Sometimes I saw faces in the yellow wallpaper, pressed from the other side, mouths open in silent screams. Sometimes I felt hands pushing from within the carpet, fingers clawing at my ankles. And always, somewhere nearby, the tall figure moved, waiting, patient. I don't remember choosing the door. I just remember stumbling through a narrow gap and finding myself in a room larger than any before. It was a square, perfect, walls flat and unbroken, yellow stretching in every direction. The ceiling 30 feet high, lights buzzing like angry hornets. The carpet soaked beneath my knees. In the center of the room was a chair. Old, wooden, stained. I was too tired to resist. I sat. The hum stopped. For the first time since I had entered the halls, there was silence. And then I heard it. Behind me, the steps, slow, heavy, drawing closer. I couldn't move, my body locked, my eyes wide. It stopped just behind me, breathing on my neck. I forced myself to turn. They found my recorder weeks later, propped on an office desk that shouldn't exist. The building was searched. No such door was found. But the tape played back my voice. Hours of it. Walking, whispering, pleading, until the final minute, a scream, and then silence, followed by footsteps, growing louder, closer, closer, closer.
Service tunnel echoes. It began with a work order. Nothing unusual. A late-night call to inspect a generator deep inside the municipal tunnels. Power fluctuations had been hitting the city grid for days. Rolling blackouts, complaints stacking up. 2 workers were sent. Eddie Markham, 46 years old, maintenance veteran, hands scarred by decades of stripped wires and sharp sheet metal. A man who trusted procedure more than people. And Jason Klein, 27. Newer hire, still carried the nervous energy of someone who thought the job was temporary. Still believed he'd leave one day, move to something better. They clocked in, logged their equipment, hard hats, lamps, radios, standard tools, and then they descended into the tunnels. The entrance hatch groaned when Eddie pulled it open. Rust flakes rained down. Cold air surged upward, stale and wet, smelling of iron and mold. Jason wrinkled his nose.
Place smells like a coffin.
Eddie didn't answer. He had been here before. Not to this section, no, but he knew the tunnels all smelled like this, like places meant to be forgotten. They descended the metal ladder. Boots rang against iron rungs. Their helmet lamps cut thin beams through the dark. Below was a landing, concrete walls slick with moisture, pipes overhead dripping condensation. The sound carried strangely. Echoes stretched too long. A single boot scuff returned seconds later, distorted like someone else dragging their foot in the dark. Jason muttered,
Thought this was just 1 level down.
Eddie checked the map clipped to his belt. A crude layout of service tunnels drawn decades ago. Generator rooms 3 sections in. Won't take long. They walked. Concrete gave way to brickwork, old, damp, half eroded. Some walls bowed inward, as if the earth was trying to swallow them back. The hum of the city above grew faint. The deeper they went, the more it felt like nothing existed but the tunnels. At first, it was the radios, a crackle in Jason's headset, static fuzzing like a detuned station. He tapped it.
Control, say again?
Only static answered. Then, faintly, his own voice, repeating what he had just said, lagging behind by 5 seconds. Control never responded. Jason pulled off the headset, swore under his breath.
It's bouncing signals down here. Has to be.
Eddie didn't look back. He kept walking.
Stay on frequency. Might need it.
The tunnel stretched on, junction after junction. Always left or right. Always the same dripping pipes, the same wet brick. Jason adjusted his lamp. The beam trembled. He swore the shadows moved after he passed. Not before. After. Minutes later, the radio crackled again. This time it was Eddie's voice. Calm. Even. Saying words he hadn't said yet.
Keep your eyes forward.
Jason frowned.
What?
And then Eddie spoke, out loud this time.
Keep your eyes forward.
Jason froze.
You just said that.
Eddie stopped, turned, his lamp beam cut across Jason's pale face.
No, I didn't.
They reached a junction that wasn't on the map. 4 corridors split from the chamber, all identical, all damp, yellow lit by weak bulbs dangling from wires. Eddie compared the map to the walls, frowned. There's only supposed to be 2. Jason pointed left. So, which way? Eddie didn't answer. The map was useless. He picked one at random. The left corridor. they walked. But 20 minutes later, they stepped into the same junction again. Same dripping pipes, same dangling bulbs, same graffiti smeared across the wall. Jason swore. "We're going in circles." Eddie's jaw tightened. "Keep moving." They chose another path. Again, the same junction. A third path, a fourth. Always the same chamber waiting. Jason's voice shook.
"We're trapped. It's looping."
Eddie stared at the walls, stared at the dripping pipes. He put his hand against the brick, warm, faintly pulsing, like a vein. He pulled away, didn't tell Jason what he felt. Their footsteps grew louder, not just echoing, duplicating. A half second behind, then a full second, then 3. At times, it sounded like entire groups were walking behind them, marching, boots slapping concrete in perfect rhythm. But when they turned, empty tunnels. Jason's breathing quickened. He whispered,
"They sound closer."
Eddie snapped,
"Don't talk."
The echoes didn't like talking, and every time they spoke, the echoes grew stronger, louder, distorted. At one junction, Eddie whispered a single word.
"Stop."
And 5 seconds later, the tunnel filled with whispers. Dozens of voices all hissing, "Stop, stop, 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 stop," until the word dissolved into static. Jason covered his ears.
"Make it stop."
Eddie grabbed his shoulder.
"Quiet."
The whispers faded, but the echoes of their footsteps never did. The air grew colder. Their lamps flickered, batteries drained faster than they should. Jason's teeth chattered.
"It's freezing down here."
Eddie didn't answer. His breath fogged in front of him, and then they saw it. At the far end of a corridor, under a swaying light, something stood. Tall, too tall, its head nearly brushing the ceiling, its shape blurred, edges flickering like static. Sometimes it looked human, sometimes stretched, broken, bent at angles impossible to hold. It didn't move, didn't breathe, it just watched. Jason whispered,
"Eddie."
The figure flickered and closer, up half the distance now. Jason stumbled back.
"It moved."
But Eddie shook his head.
"No. The light's playing tricks."
Jason's lamp beam hit the wall. Shadows rippled. When the beam returned, the figure was gone. Hours later, they reached a door, steel, rusted, stenciled with faded paint. Generator room 3B. Jason sagged with relief.
"Finally."
Eddie pressed his palm to the door. Cold, too cold. He pulled the handle and the hinges shrieked. Inside was not a generator room. It was a hall, endless. A cathedral of pipes and wires stretching into black. Generators the size of buildings lined the floor. But their design was wrong. Twisted frames, looping wires like veins, glass tubes filled with liquid that pulsed as though alive. The machines hummed, deep, resonant, like breathing. Jason whispered,
What is this?"
Eddie's lamp caught movement between the machines. Figures, dozens of them, thin, crooked faces blank as paper. They swayed with the hum, not alive, not dead, something between. Jason backed toward the door.
"We shouldn't be here."
Eddie didn't move. His eyes were locked on one of the machines, and inside a glass tube, floating in pale fluid. A face, his own, eyes closed, mouth open, lips moving, whispering words he couldn't hear. The hum grew louder. The machine shook, pipes burst, spraying liquid that reeked of rust and rot. The blank-faced figures turned. Their heads moved in unison, snapping toward Jason and Eddie. Mouths opened, and the tunnel filled with echoes. Every word the men had spoken since they entered, layered, distorted, played back all at once.
"Place smells like a coffin." "Stay on frequency." "You just said that." We're trapped. Make it stop.
Overlapping, screaming, until the words weren't words anymore, just sound. Jason bolted. He ran into the dark, his lamp beam flailing across walls that twisted away from him. Eddie followed. The machines groaned, collapsing. The hum deepened, the air thickened, and the tunnels bent, and reality folded. Weeks later, rescue crews searched the tunnels. They found the hatch open. They found the ladder wet as though something had climbed out. But no bodies. Only a radio. Still crackling, repeating in Eddie's voice,
Keep your eyes forward.
again and again and again.
Atrium of glass.
The building had been empty for years. That's what Riley said when he pitched the idea.
Abandoned corporate tower. Sealed up after the crash. Nobody's been inside in decades.
I should have asked him why. Why a company would leave behind a 40-story skyscraper in the heart of the city. Why its lights sometimes still flickered at night. Why neighbors swore they heard voices echoing from the upper floors. But I didn't ask. That was the point of urban exploring, wasn't it? To go where no one else would. To put yourself in places that didn't want you there. So there we were, 3 of us, me, Riley, Dom, midnight on a Tuesday, bolt cutters, flashlights, packs loaded with cameras, masks, gloves. The city hummed outside, cars, sirens, distant voices. But the moment we cut the chains and slipped inside, the sound died. The building swallowed it whole. And when the heavy glass doors closed behind us, we were somewhere else. My first thought was how clean it was. Not spotless, not polished, but wrong. No dust, no trash, no graffiti, no rats, just stillness. The lobby stretched wide, ceiling vanishing into shadow. The floor was marble, pale and veined, cold under my boots. A reception desk squatted at the center, its surface bare, the chair tucked neatly in, and the walls were glass, from floor to ceiling, reflecting us in pale, warped fragments. Riley swung his flashlight in a wide arc.
Hell yes. This is prime.
His voice bounced strangely, one word splitting into 3. Hell, hell, hell. Yes, yes, yes. Dom grunted. He was already filming, his camera perched on a gimbal. The lens glinted in the glass. I lifted my flashlight, catching my own reflection. It stared back, delayed, half a second behind. I blinked, my reflection blinked after. I raised my hand, slowly. The copy followed. Late. Riley's laugh cracked through the silence.
Creepy, right? Like laggy mirrors.
But I couldn't shake it. That tiny delay. The sense that what I saw wasn't a mirror at all. That it was watching. Waiting. We pushed deeper. The lobby opened into corridors lined with glass walls. Offices behind them, cubicles, conference rooms, but all of them were empty. Chairs tucked in, papers stacked neatly, computers dark. As though the workers had stepped out for lunch and never returned. Our reflections followed us. Not just in the glass, in the floor, in the ceiling panels. Everywhere we turned, copies trailed us. Each step half a second too late. Dom muttered,
Gonna make sick footage.
His voice trembled. Riley slapped his shoulder. Don't wuss out now. But Riley's reflection didn't slap Dom. It stood still. Watching, Dom didn't notice. I did. I stopped walking. Stared. My reflection froze too. And then, as Riley and Dom moved ahead. It smiled. My mouth didn't move, only the reflections. We found the elevators at the far end of the hall, a bank of 6, doors sealed shut, displays blank, stairs beside them. We climbed. The stairwell smelled faintly of ozone, a sharp electric tang. My flashlight caught broken glass along the steps, shards glinting like teeth. The higher we climbed, the heavier the air grew, and the reflections followed. In the glass doors we passed, in framed pictures that should have shown cityscapes but instead showed us. Lagging, always lagging, until the 4th floor. That's when they began to change. We entered another corridor, walls lined with frosted glass. The reflections moved slower now, entire seconds behind. Riley waved his arm. His copy dragged a beat late. Dom laughed nervously.
Ha ha ha. Glitchy as hell.
But then my copy stopped. I walked forward. It didn't. It stood still, frozen, mid-step. And when I turned to look again, it wasn't me anymore. It was taller, leaner. Its face stretched, mouth opening wider than it should. I stumbled back. My shoulder smacked the real wall. The figure blurred, reset, looked like me again, but I knew what I saw. By the 10th floor, we weren't talking much. The air pressed heavy, like being underwater. Our breaths echoed too loudly, repeating down the glass halls. The building didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt alive, breathing, watching. We entered a wide chamber, a break room maybe, tables lined against walls, vending machines dark and dead, every surface mirrored. 100 versions of us. Some walked when we walked, some didn't. I watched Dom scratch his chin. His reflection dug its nails in, tearing skin that wasn't there. I gagged. Riley's reflection turned its head 90 degrees. Bones popping. Neck bending too far. The sound carried through the room, but Riley didn't hear. He was laughing again, shaky.
This is insane. You're filming, right? This is gold.
Dom nodded, pale, but the camera lens caught something behind him. Someone standing, not Riley, not me, a 4th shape. Dark, long, its face blurred into static. When I whipped around, no one there, only the glass, and the thing inside it, waiting. We reached the atrium near the top. A massive open space, 4 stories tall, ringed by balconies. And every wall, every surface was glass, the ceiling too. Endless reflections stretching into infinity. The air buzzed, vibrating in my bones, the hum of a building that shouldn't breathe. Dom whispered,
It's like a hive.
and then the reflections stopped lagging. They moved on their own. One stepped forward, out of sync. Another tilted its head, mouth tearing wider and wider until the jaw snapped loose. Dozens of us splitting away, crawling across the walls. Some were still human, some weren't. Their eyes locked on us. We froze. Riley whispered,
Keep filming.
and then the first reflection peeled itself from the wall. Glass bending outward like water. It stepped through, skin smooth, blank. No face, just a pale surface that shimmered like wet paint. It walked toward Riley, and he didn't move. Couldn't. Dozens more pressed forward, hands slapping glass. Cracking it, warping it. All of them stepping through, one by one, until the atrium wasn't empty anymore. It was crowded, overfull. All of them us, but wrong. So wrong. I don't remember running. I don't remember how we made it back to the ground floor, or how the glass didn't cut us to ribbons when it shattered overhead. I only remember the lobby again, the reception desk, the doors, and the reflections, all frozen, watching. We stumbled out into the night, gasping, blinking against streetlights, but the city didn't sound right anymore. Too quiet, too empty, like the world we left behind had been replaced. Weeks later, I saw the footage online. Dom had uploaded it. Raw cut, no edits. The video ended in the atrium. Dozens of us, staring, smiling. The comments were filled with theories. ARG, hoax, VFX. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I pass dark glass, I catch a glimpse. Not my reflection, not anymore. It lags, and it smiles.
The sub-basement.
They were just contractors. 4 men hired to clear debris from a government-owned building slated for renovation. Nothing special, nothing dangerous. Or so the contract read. The crew was small, pulled from different agencies. 4 men who didn't know each other before that night. 4 men who wouldn't have chosen to be together under any other circumstance. Mason was the lead. Thick-bodied, late 40s, a lifetime of construction behind him. His voice carried authority, though he never raised it. Torres was younger, a wiry 35 with restless hands and a crooked smile. Always talking, always trying to fill silence. Grant was the quiet one, ex-military, tall, broad-shouldered, moved like a man who expected ambushes around every corner. And then there was Ellis, barely 25, hired because he worked cheap, still green, still awkward, still looking at the world with the wide eyes of someone who hadn't yet been broken down by it. They met at the gates of the building at dusk. A concrete monolith, once a research facility, long abandoned after funding dried up. The city wanted it repurposed. A contract went out. The lowest bidder got it. And these 4 were sent in. Hard hats, gloves, flashlights, radios, a simple job. Clear the basements of debris. Check the walls for stability. Report any major structural issues. But when Mason unlocked the service hatch and led the way down the steel stairs, none of them knew the truth. That the building had more basements than the blueprints showed. The stairs led into dust and silence. Basement level 1. Storage cages lined with rusted shelves, old file cabinets, shattered desks, their lamps carved narrow beams into the dark.
Looks like a graveyard,
Torres muttered. Mason grunted.
Just junk. We haul it out. Get paid. That's it.
They moved methodically. Grant hauled aside old furniture. Ellis stacked broken chairs into piles. Torres filmed the work on his phone, grinning for the camera. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by scraping metal and clattering debris. Until Ellis found the hatch, a square of steel half hidden under fallen shelves. He brushed dust from it with gloved hands.
Boss, we got something.
Mason stepped over, frowning. The hatch had no handle, just a recessed groove. Its edges were welded shut, old welds rough, sloppy.
Not on the plans,
Mason muttered. Torres knelt beside him.
So, extra storage. Maybe that's where they kept the good stuff.
Grant crouched, running fingers along the seam.
Weld's been torched from this side. Somebody didn't want it opened again.
The silence deepened. Mason's lamp caught something stenciled on the steel. Faded paint. B1. Level -1. He exhaled slowly.
Grab the cutters.
The hatch groaned open, rust shrieking. Stale air poured out, cold and damp, reeking of mold and something metallic. The men pulled scarves over their mouths.
Christ.
Ellis muttered, gagging. The opening revealed another stairwell. Narrow, concrete walls slick with condensation. Torres laughed nervously.
Guess we found the secret basement.
Grant didn't laugh. His lamp probed downward, catching only darkness. Mason spoke flatly.
We check it. Quick look. If it's not on the plans, we log it, close it, report it.
They descended. The stairs wound down farther than expected. At least 5 stories. Finally, the stairwell opened into a corridor. Narrow, low ceiling. Walls raw concrete, wet to the touch. Pipes ran overhead, thick, corroded, dripping foul-smelling water. The floor sloped slightly, just enough to notice. And the silence. Deeper here. So deep their own footsteps sounded wrong. Muffled. As though the walls swallowed sound whole. Ellis whispered.
How far does this go?
No one answered. They walked. The corridor stretched on, lined with heavy steel doors every 30 feet, each marked with faded stencils. LAB1, LAB2, LAB3. But the rooms were empty. Dust, broken chairs, rusted cabinets. Nothing else. Nothing alive. Torres muttered.
Why hide this?
Grant touched a wall.
Because it's not supposed to be here.
Mason's lamp found something else stenciled on the far wall. B2. Another hatch. Another descent. This stairwell was narrower, the air heavier, the smell stronger. Their lamps barely pushed back the dark. Halfway down, Ellis stopped.
Did you hear that?
The others froze, faint, barely audible. A drip, steady, rhythmic, but too regular, like a metronome. Torres forced a laugh.
Water, pipes, that's all.
But Grant's jaw tightened. He had heard the difference. They reached the bottom. This corridor was worse, longer, narrower. The walls pulsed with moisture, black mold blooming in streaks. And the floor, slick, wet, their boots left streaks in grime that looked disturbingly like old handprints. The rooms here were different. No furniture, just stains. Dark patches on the concrete, long since dried. Shapes that could have been anything, but looked like people. Ellis muttered.
We shouldn't be here.
Torres smirked.
What? Afraid of some mold?
But his voice was thin. Grant scanned the corridor, shoulders tense. And that's when Mason saw it. At the far end, another stencil. B3. He exhaled slowly.
This is too deep.
But they kept going. Because turning back never feels like an option until it's too late. Level -3 was different. The air was warm, humid, like stepping into a greenhouse. But there were no plants, just walls. The concrete here was cracked, split by seams that oozed black moisture. Pipes jutted out like bones. Some leaked, Some pulsed. Ellis whispered,
It's breathing.
and it was. The walls expanded ever so slightly, contracted, moisture running in rivulets, the sound of dripping everywhere. But there was no drip. It was the walls. Sweating. Torres muttered,
This is some chemical leak, right? Some reactor, some dash.
but his words faltered, because one of the walls twitched, as though something behind it shifted. Grant stepped back.
Not chemical.
Mason's voice was steady, but his eyes darted.
Mark it. We'll seal it and report it, that's it.
But no one moved to mark it. No one wanted to touch the walls, because they were moving. Slowly, breathing. And when Ellis lifted his lamp, he saw it clearly. A palm print, pressed from the inside. The corridor ended in a wide door. Heavier than the others, its surface black, glistening. Not metal, not wood. Something else. The stencil here was different. No B4, just a symbol. A circle with jagged lines radiating outward. Mason touched the door. His glove came away wet. Grant shook his head.
We're not opening it.
But the door opened itself, soundlessly, and the chamber beyond yawned wide. The walls were not concrete, not stone. Something older, black rock slick with moisture, carved with grooves that pulsed faintly with light. The chamber stretched high above their lamps, ceiling lost in shadow. And in the center, a pit, circular, rimmed with steel. But the steel was warped, bent outward, as though something had climbed out. The pit exhaled. Warm air rushed past them, smelling of rust and rot. And far below, in the darkness, something shifted. Not footsteps, not breathing, something deeper. A weight, a presence. Torres backed away.
Nope, no way. We're done.
But his reflection didn't back away, because there were no mirrors. And yet, there it was, in the slick walls, their shapes, moving wrong, delayed, smiling. The chamber groaned, a low vibration that rattled teeth and bones. The walls pulsed faster, the grooves glowing brighter. Ellis screamed as a section of wall tore open, black fluid gushing out. Hands pressed through, not human, too long, too thin, skin slick and glistening, dozens of them. Grant fired his sidearm. Bullets punched wet holes, vanishing into the dark. The chamber didn't care. The walls closed in. Pipes burst. The pit yawned wider. Something massive shifted below. A shape rising, indistinct, but vast. The four men ran. Through corridors that bent wrong, that stretched, that looped. Their lamps flickered, sometimes showing walls, sometimes showing faces, their own faces, but twisted, grinning, reaching. Ellis fell. His scream cut off as the floor opened beneath him. Torres vanished into the glassy walls, his reflection dragging him inward. Grant shoved Mason forward.
Go.
But the stairwell was gone. Only more corridors, more doors, more stencils, B4, B5, B6, endless. Weeks later, another crew was sent. They found the hatch open, the stairwell flooded with black water. No sign of Mason. No sign of Torres, Ellis, or Grant. Only the cameras. Footage warped, corrupted. Fragments remained. The chamber, the pit, and faces. 4 of them. Smiling. Lagging half a second behind.
The Nowhere Hotel.
The desert at night feels like the edge of the world. Nothing out there except the cracked highway, the endless flats of sand and scrub, and the sky, black, bloated, heavy with stars that seem too bright, too close, like they are leaning down to listen. I had been driving for hours, headlights cutting cones into the dark, radio silent, the hum of tires on pavement, the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I told myself I would not stop. Not for gas, not for rest, not for anything. The highway stretched into nothing, and all I had to do was follow it, mile after mile, until the next town, the next cluster of lights, the next place that felt human. But then the storm came. At first, it was just a shimmer on the horizon, a pale wall rising where the desert kissed the stars. Then it rolled closer, and the shimmer became a churning mass of sand, a living thing rushing toward me. The wind hit first, slamming against the car in howling bursts, rattling the windows, shaking the frame. Then came the sand. Thousands, millions of grains slashing sideways, scratching the paint, scraping glass, filling the air until the world outside disappeared. My headlights caught nothing but a beige blur. Visibility dropped to inches. I slowed to a crawl, fingers white-knuckled on the wheel, heart hammering as I tried to follow the faint black ribbon of asphalt under my tires. The storm swallowed sound, too. No crickets, no wind hiss, no hum of faraway engines, just the constant suffocating roar of sand. And then, like a cruel joke, I saw the sign. It appeared through the blur, faint at first, a rectangle of pale light glowing in the storm. As I crept closer, its letters came into focus. The Nowhere Hotel. Vacancy always. The sign looked decades old, paint peeling, light buzzing in and out. The words carried the kind of strange assurance that makes no sense. A message less for the weary traveler, and more for something deeper. A promise, or a trap. I almost laughed. It was too absurd, too perfectly timed. But as the storm grew worse, as the road itself seemed to vanish under an ocean of sand, the sign became not just an option, but a command. My headlights swept left, and there it was, a driveway half buried in grit, leading to a shadow in the storm. I turned, and found myself pulling into a parking lot where the sand did not reach. The Nowhere Hotel stood 3 stories tall, its walls faded stucco, its roofline sharp against the starless sky. A neon sign buzzed above the entrance, tubes sputtering with sickly red and green light that read, Nowhere Hotel. The E flickered, dying, so the sign pulsed. No har. The parking lot was empty, every space unmarked, blank asphalt stretching into darkness. I killed the engine, silence pressed down like a weight. No wind, no insects, no trace of the storm that raged beyond the lot's edge. It was as if I had stepped out of the world entirely. When I opened the car door, the air was wrong. Not warm like desert air should be, not cold either. It was heavy, thick, with a faint smell like mildew and perfume, the scent of something old trying to mask rot. The hotel doors opened without a sound as I approached. The lobby was dimly lit, chandeliers hanging overhead like skeletal cages, crystals clouded, metal tarnished, wallpaper peeled in curling sheets, exposing plaster pocked with cracks. A carpet stretched across the floor, its once elegant pattern now worn into something unrecognizable, swirling shapes that seemed to writhe if I stared too long. The silence was absolute, no hum of air conditioning, no soft music, no distant chatter, just stillness. The front desk sat at the far wall, polished wood scarred with scratches, a bell gleaming atop it. No one stood behind the counter. I pressed the bell. The sound rang out sharp, clear, echoing far too long. It seemed to travel down corridors I couldn't see, into rooms I hadn't entered, into places far deeper than the lobby. The silence returned. Then from a doorway behind the desk, a man emerged. He was tall, impossibly thin, dressed in a black suit that looked pressed and perfect. His skin was pale, almost gray, stretched too tightly across sharp bones. His smile was wrong, too wide, lips curling upward without warmth.
"Welcome,"
he said. His voice was flat, without accent, without inflection.
"Checking in."
I tried to answer but found my throat dry. Words caught. I nodded. The man's smile deepened. He reached beneath the desk and placed a brass key onto the counter. It was heavy, ornate, its number etched deep, 217.
"Second floor, end of the hall,"
he said. I did not sign anything. I did not pay. I simply took the key, and the man watched me climb the stairs, his eyes never blinking. The hallway was longer than it should have been. Carpet stretched in damp rolls, sagging as if waterlogged. The walls were lined with doors, each bearing brass numbers dulled with age. Some doors had no numbers at all. Some were cracked open, faint yellow lights spilling through. As I walked, I glanced into them. Each room was the same. A bed perfectly made, sheets tucked tight, pillows stacked, TVS glowing static, lamps buzzing. But the mirrors. Every room had a mirror, and each mirror showed the hallway. Not me, never me. I hurried. Room 217 waited at the very end. The key slid into the lock with unnatural smoothness. The door opened without resistance, without a creak, without sound. The room inside was clean, neat. A single bed, a lamp, a chair. But the window looked out into nothing. Not the parking lot, not the desert. Just endless black, as though the building hung suspended in a void. I closed the curtains. I told myself I would leave in the morning, but I already knew morning would not come. Sleep never came. Whispers leaked through the vents, faint at first, then stronger.
Check in. Stay with us. Don't leave.
I pressed my ear to the grate, heart racing. The voices multiplied. Men, women, children. A chorus of whispers, each calling, coaxing, pleading. I staggered back. The whispers did not stop. I opened the door, desperate to escape, and found the hallway had changed. Longer now, dimmer. The carpet squirmed underfoot, damp and pulsing. Doors opened as I passed. Faces peered out. Guests, skin gray and sagging, eyes wide and glassy, mouths stretched into smiles that trembled at the edges. They whispered in unison.
Stay.
I ran, but the hallway looped, doors repeating, patterns repeating, until I saw myself at the far end, a perfect copy, watching me, smiling. Somehow, I found the lobby again. The clerk was waiting, smile wider now, showing too many teeth.
"You're settling in,"
he said. I choked. I need to leave. His smile didn't falter.
"No one leaves. Not until the stay is complete."
From the shadows, the staff emerged. A maid, her uniform pristine, carrying a silver tray. She lifted dome after dome, revealing not meals, but collections of things. Teeth arranged like pearls, eyes rolling wetly, fingers twitching though severed. A bellhop dragging a suitcase that bucked and twisted, something inside pounding against its walls. A manager, taller than the others, face obscured in shadow though the lights glared bright. His presence filled the room like a weight pressing on my chest. All of them smiling, all of them watching. I stumbled through a side door, into another hall. Another loop. Another wrongness. The hall spilled into a ballroom. Chandeliers blazed, dripping with light that cast no warmth. Tables stood in neat rows, each set with gleaming silver cutlery and white linens. Every chair was filled. Dozens of guests sat in silence, faces slack, eyes empty. At the far end, a stage, a curtain drawn tight. Music began. A piano, notes discordant, keys pressed in the wrong order, creating a melody that scraped against bone. The curtain rose, and my reflection stepped out. It wore my clothes, my face, my smile. It bowed, and the guests erupted in applause. But the sound was wrong. Mouths opened and closed, hands jerked up and down, but the noise filled the room independent of them, a roar of clapping that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I stumbled back, gasping. My reflection raised its head. Its eyes were black pits. Its smile stretched too wide, splitting skin. "Your stay," it said, voice my own, "has only begun." I fled down a stairwell I had never seen. The air grew colder. The walls shifted from plaster to stone, sweating with condensation. Pipes ran overhead, dripping rust-colored water onto my shoulders. The smell was unbearable. Mold, rot, iron. Cells lined the corridor. Each cell held a mirror. Each mirror held a figure. Guests, staff, all distorted, all staring. Some screamed silently, mouths open too wide. Some laughed, faces twisted in manic joy. Some simply pressed their hands to the glass, eyes begging, pleading. And in one mirror, me, beaten, bloodied, mouth whispering soundless words. My name. I staggered back, bile rising, and ran. But the mirrors followed. Reflections stretched down every corridor, crowding closer, their mouths moving in unison. My name, over and over. There was no exit. Every stairwell looped back. Every door opened into another hall. Until, without warning, I was back in the lobby. The clerk stood waiting, smile infinite, key in hand.
"Check out?"
he asked. I nodded, broken. Tears streaked my face. His smile widened, lips tearing.
"Good. Checkout is forever."
He pressed the key into my palm. It burned. It melted. It sank into my flesh, merging with skin, fusing bone and brass. I screamed. The guests screamed with me. The staff screamed with me. The walls screamed with me. Until I was not me. Until I was smiling. Until I was one of them. Travelers speak of it sometimes. On stormy nights, when the desert turns hostile and the road disappears, they see a glow in the distance. A sign flickering in the dark, "Nowhere Hotel, vacancy always." Most drive past, some do not. Those who stop are never seen again. But sometimes, in gas stations or thrift shops miles away, a VHS tape turns up, its label scrawled in ink. Guest 217. When played, the tape shows static, then a face, mine, smiling, welcoming, checking in.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Eerie Archives channel. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see in the next video. Until next time, stay eerie.